Is justice enough when the system itself may be broken? This is the big question after the conviction of Lucy Letby, a 33-year-old nurse who is now known as the UK's most prolific child serial killer in recent history. Today, we are diving into a deeply unsettling and tragic case that's making headlines not just in the UK, but across the world. So be sure to watch till the end. Lucy Letby, a 33-year-old nurse, has just been convicted for some truly heinous crimes, which makes her the most notorious child serial killer in modern UK history. She was found guilty of murdering 7 infants at the Countess of Chester Hospital over a 1-year period from 2015 to 2016. And get this, she didn't just stop there. She was also convicted for trying to kill 6 other babies. The methods she used are chilling: injecting air into some infants, force-feeding milk to others, and poisoning a couple with insulin. During their inquiry, police discovered some truly terrifying notes written by Letby. Letby actually wrote down, "I am evil, I did this." She left a note saying she took those babies' lives on purpose because she felt she wasn't good enough to care for them. She even wrote, "I don't deserve to live. It's just bone-chilling to think about." Some of them had her co-workers' names, along with comments like, "Who's making these allegations? Do they have any written proof?" It's like she was trying to get ahead of the accusations or something. She even had one note saying, "I haven't done anything wrong and they have no evidence, so why am I being sidelined?" She was talking about getting kicked out of the neonatal unit there. Cops really started focusing on her when they noticed the scary rise in the number of newborns either dying or having serious issues all of a sudden. It all happened while she was on duty in the neonatal unit. In an unusual move, she actually refused to be present in the courtroom for the latest set of verdicts. The jury had multiple hearings to deliver these verdicts, but none of it became public knowledge until the jury was officially dismissed. Now, the emotional intensity during these hearings was off the charts. When the first set of guilty verdicts was read out on August 8th, after the jury deliberated for an exhausting 76 hours, Letby broke down in tears, and during the second set of verdicts on August 11th, she was similarly distraught. Her mother was audibly sobbing in the courtroom, blurting out that this can't be real, while the families of the affected babies were understandably in a state of shock and despair. Surprisingly, Letby was found not guilty on 2 counts of attempted murder, and the jury couldn't make up their minds on 6 other attempted murder charges. Now, the prosecutor, Nicholas Johnson, has asked for an extra 28 days to decide if they'll seek a retrial for these remaining 6 counts. So this isn't completely over just yet. This trial against Lucy Letby began in October of 2022, and let me tell you, it was a roller coaster. Prosecutors didn't hold back. They called her a calculating and devious opportunist who went as far as gaslighting her own co-workers to hide her horrible actions. Cheshire police did a full investigation because they were worried about a sudden rise in the number of premature babies who died or almost died at the hospital. Before everything went wrong in June 2015, less than 3 babies died every year in the newborn unit. The sudden and unexpected rise in deaths under her watch is what makes this so scary. Now, Letby's defense team put up quite a fight, saying she was just a scapegoat. They argued that the actual cause of all these tragedies was a series of failures in the unit's care system. But the jury wasn't buying it, and after a trial that lasted more than 10 months, making it, believe it or not, the longest murder trial in UK history, they found her guilty on most counts. The emotional toll of this case has been enormous. One family member of a victim actually left the courtroom when the jury said they couldn't decide on the remaining 6 counts of attempted murder. Even a couple of the jurors seemed visibly distressed. The judge told the jury, made up of 4 men and 7 women, that this has been an incredibly disturbing case. He went so far as to excuse them from ever having to serve on a jury again because of the emotional strain. So we're still not sure why Lucy Letby doesn't want to attend her own sentencing. The judge hasn't spilled the beans on that one yet, but it's created a bit of a stir because the Ministry of Justice has basically said, look, we really want victims to see justice served and for the convicted to hear, loud and clear, how society condemns their actions. Currently, judges in the UK can actually order defendants to show up in court, and if they don't, they can face up to 2 more years behind bars. The government is even looking into making it a law to force convicted criminals to be present during sentencing. The parents of twin boys who were among Letby's victims spoke to the BBC and didn't mince words. They called her a hateful human being who basically ruined their lives. She murdered one of their twins and tried to off the other one the next day. That surviving twin is now 7 years old, and because of what she did, he's got severe learning difficulties and a whole bunch of complex needs. His mom just summed it up by saying, "There's a consequence and he's living with it." Janet Moore from the Cheshire Police, who's been the go-between for the families, said this entire ordeal has been a long, torturous, and emotional journey. The families are heartbroken, angry, and to be honest, they're just numb. And the worst part? They might never fully understand why any of this ever happened. Now, legal proceedings have found her guilty after 22 days of jury deliberation, and she's been sentenced to life in prison. But there are still lingering questions, particularly concerning the hospital's role in this tragedy. Attorney Richard Scorer, who represents 2 of the affected families, shares that these families are enduring unimaginable pain, as you would expect. While the court case may have provided some form of closure regarding the nurse's guilt, it has also raised further questions about the hospital management's responsibility. Scorer says that there is still a feeling that the hospital cared more about protecting its image than about making sure patients were safe. To address this issue, Scorer suggests that the focus is now shifting to hold the hospital accountable. The affected families are likely exploring various legal avenues to seek answers and possibly bring about systemic changes that would prevent such tragedies from happening in the future. Parents had supposedly brought up concerns before, but they weren't dealt with properly, which makes people wonder if the hospital is responsible. The case is horrific and tragic on multiple levels, not just because of the crimes themselves, but also because of the possible systemic failures that allowed such atrocities to happen in the first place. According to Richard Scorer, a man named Harvey, who was the medical director at the time, seems to have neglected their duty to be transparent and supportive towards the grieving families. After losing their children, one of the families tried reaching out to Harvey, as his correspondents had invited them to get more details about ongoing investigations. Despite their multiple attempts to make contact, Harvey never responded to them, leaving them feeling brushed off and in the dark. This lack of response occurred even before the police investigation had started, so it wasn't as though he was constrained by an ongoing inquiry. Scorer emphasizes that the families are just ordinary people, not well-versed in navigating healthcare bureaucracies or medical jargon, especially while coping with such tragic losses. They feel that the hospital failed them by not helping them understand what went wrong. Regarding civil actions, Scorer, while not handling that aspect directly, expects that given the situation, the hospital would most likely end up settling any civil suits. However, a settlement doesn't really provide the families the answers or the accountability they seek. It doesn't shed light on systemic issues or managerial failures. This is why there's a call for public inquiry to delve deeper into the circumstances surrounding these horrific incidents. Scorer expresses his frustration over how often public inquiries into the NHS lead to recommendations that are simply ignored. It's especially disappointing for him as a lawyer who's been part of multiple inquiries. He feels that if you're going to spend taxpayer money on these investigations, the least you can do is follow through on implementing the suggested changes. He's seen it happen time and time again where valuable recommendations, especially around topics like whistleblower support and hospital management, just collect dust and don't lead to any real change. He also touches on a critical point about the National Health Service, the NHS, in the UK. While the NHS has many strengths, there's a clear failure when it comes to thoroughly and promptly investigating serious concerns from both patients and medical professionals. In this case, it was healthcare providers who initially raised alarms about the nurse's behavior, but management seemed to sweep these concerns under the rug. The end goal for Scorer and the families he represents is not just to find justice, but to improve the system so that a tragedy like this can never happen again. Regarding Lucy Letby, Scorer confirms that she's made no overtures, apologies, or any form of acknowledgement to the families. Moreover, she refused to appear in court during sentencing, a move he describes as enormously insulting to the victims and their families. This absence has sparked debate in the UK about changing the laws to force defendants to be present during sentencing or face additional penalties. Do you think justice can truly be served in situations like this when there might be systemic failures involved? And how can institutions be held accountable to ensure that such horrifying events don't happen again? Please share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. If you found value in this video and you want to stay updated with more in-depth discussions like this, please hit the subscribe button.